very anarchistic, to the people, right? Power to the people. All power to the people. Right on.
We are the only ones that are going to save us. Digital Death and Degradation, Manipulating the Malleability of Blackness by Charlie Banga and Samaya. Author's note. At the helm of the alt-right pipeline and manosphere, peddling false information, misleading susceptible and impressionable people in general, specifically manipulating and corralling Gen Z white male adults and teens for their race war, is not your typical Klansman or run-of-the-mill Nazi. That is to say, they are not necessarily being directly influenced by traditional white power groups and organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, racist skinheads, and the Aryan Brotherhood. Instead, they are being radicalized by social media commentators, incel influencers, and political podcasters, god-awful white supremacists / nationalists like Tim Pool, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes, and the recently murdered divisive debate bro, Charlie Kirk. Indeed, the ones who once led the charge on the original pathway to white superiority culture while preserving the colonial belief of manifest destiny and the conspiratorial Great Replacement theory has taken a backseat to a new age variant of right-wing thinkers, individuals, and fascists. Something we must remember is that white youths no longer have to be smiley spectators alongside their parents watching extrajudicial public executions via black lynchings like in the Jim Crow South to be introduced to far-right authoritarian politics and practices. This is because at the tip of their pale fingers, with the touch of a few buttons, they can now access websites and apps where they are more than likely to be subjected to countless reactionary, neoliberal / conservative media, platform, and propaganda. Death cults that yearn for their blind loyalty and membership, blogging channels that crave their undivided attention and subscription. At this very instance, you can easily find numerous white people in their formal years and onward spending their time online harassing black people as well as other marginalized communities by spewing anti-black and hateful rhetoric. Whether it be in gamer chat rooms and streaming platforms, TikTok and Twitter comment sections, or somewhere in subreddit community spaces, you can be sure that their prejudice and presence is felt amongst their black peers all over the World Wide Web. Introduction. Pro athlete, fashion model, and WNBA superstar from Baltimore, Angel Reese, has been the topic of many discussions across various news outlets and mainstream media circuits since her collegiate career at Louisiana State University. Most of the noise and chatter, the unwarranted disrespect and death threats, the online harassment and hostility, the sexual edits and racial epithets, and all the harm and hate she's received in general over the last few years began after her team's 2023 NCAA National Championship victory over the University of Iowa, the Hawkeyes. The losing team that had popular three-point shooting playmaker Caitlin Clark, whose fan base dubbed the Great White Hope, a microaggressive phrase aimed towards African Americans, often projected onto European American athletes who are believed to have the talent and potential to beat black people in sports they mostly dominate. Nevertheless, despite Reese's life-changing success story and generational rise to fame, the 6'3" forward still has had to endure some of the most inappropriate and indefensible things. Last year in September, for the debut episode of her podcast, Unapologetically Angel, a platform she officially launched to gain control of her voice, formally address false narratives levied against her, and dispel certain myths surrounding her name, Reese sat down with her cousin to speak the truth and discuss several issues that were weighing heavy on her heart. 11 minutes and 45 seconds into the conversation, she briefly spoke about being sexualized on multiple occasions, stating, "People have made AI pictures of me naked. They have sent it to my family members." Although she says in an Instagram live video that her agent was able to get in contact with Twitter and have them remove the unsolicited pictures, one knows that those images are still floating throughout the ethos of social media. Having witnessed this digital fetishization and defilement take place in real time, the reactions and responses revolving around the whole ordeal was truly gut-wrenching and unsettling. One can only imagine how much of a psychological toll that was for her mentally. Here we have a young black woman who's never once posted nudes of herself online anywhere, but somehow she ends up being vilified, objectified, slut-shamed, and made a mockery of, mostly by unhinged white male Caitlin Clark fans and so-called sports journalists. And of course, black people, mainly women, were the only ones coming to her defense and speaking out against the non-consensual, falsified photos of her likeness. What Angel Reese has experienced is the degenerative nature of rape culture extended into the cybersphere, virtual forms of sexual violence, abuse, and coercion, the erotic acts and advances through electronics for nefarious purposes, in addition to the modifying and manipulation of blackness in the metaverse via editing software for salacious reasons. All of which, in the end, creates a disempowering warped spectacle, one that engenders, objectifies, and strips the black body of personal functions for self-gratification. What black feminist thinker Hortense Spillers calls pornotroping, but instead enmeshed into the digital domain. What unprecedented type of malleability does blackness possess that makes it always already available to be redistributed into someone's pervasive alteration? What does it mean for the black imago to be transmuted, redesigned, digitized, and fashioned anew, our being now seen from angles that, while walking this earth, we never ventured to before? When rummaging through the vast contours of the libidinal economy, what happens when non-black fantasies and desires are allowed to breach into arenas that should require permission? What does it mean for someone to have the ability to reshape and contort a body after it has been claimed by death? To reconfigure its image or being into something that completely distorts it from what it once was when it was sentient and breathing? What if the wait to alter the black body after its physical departure is now forever unnecessary because computer science and technology allows new forms to be created almost instantly? While black folks work earnestly to venerate their dead, what is implied when there is another form of recreation happening by those that love to languish in the lobby of a room illuminated by anti-blackness? Does it mean that even when breath eternally vacates the lungs of black folks, we continue being the embodiment of nothing while simultaneously becoming a new iteration of something that can be rewritten, memed, or artificially crafted? For Zakiya Iman Jackson, we were marked as black, which is to say that blackness was thrusted upon us by those who thought of us as the inferior race during the eras of African enslavement and subjectivity. She makes this apparent with her purposeful decision to use the term blackened people within her literary works as opposed to black people. A reminder and delineation to make clear that we, people of the African diaspora, weren't necessarily born black of our own volition and free will, but rather we became black by colonial domination and decree. Likewise, Calvin Warren states that blackness is a function imposed on the flesh. This definition rejects the liberal humanist notion of those who may view blackness as a sort of cultural identity. Since blackness is an imposition on the body, there is an implication attached, meaning there is a role that blackness must fulfill. Perhaps it is through black being where the interminable and incalculable come together to form something that creates a pathway for the impossible. Limits no longer pose a problem with blackness as a foundation for the fathomless. In other words, blackness is the world's playground. It is often where the state, the non-black, and the white go to make the unimaginable a reality. To articulate and extend our analysis further, we offer a meditation on Zakiya Iman Jackson's ingenious concept of ontological plasticization to theorize about the formlessness and fluidity of blackness as it pertains to the material and metaphysical ways in which whites and non-blacks have maliciously utilized its malleability to their expediency. An anti-black endeavor that keeps the racial wheel of terror spinning well into the contemporary afterlife of slavery. It is through Professor Jackson's remarkable work that we're able to reckon with and critique anti-blackness as it emerges inside the technologically advanced realm of digital media and AI. The Techno-Fascist Forecast. In the 21st century age of AI, artificial intelligence has become a computerized blight on both the natural climate and the black population, especially in the southern regions of the United States. In Christina Sharp's In the Wake on Blackness and Being, she states how weather is the totality of our environments. The weather is the total climate, and that climate is anti-black. With this revelation and understanding, it explains why the air pollution in Memphis, Tennessee, caused by techno-fascist Elon Musk and his gentrifying data center, which also has an extremely high water usage that consumes up to 1 million gallons every 24 hours, exemplifies how anti-Blackness permeates every aspect of Black existence. According to Truth Out's article, Big Tech Data Centers Compound Decades of Environmental Racism in the South, and More Perfect Union's video, We Went to the Town Elon Musk is Poisoning, local residents speak of how the air that once invigorated them when they opened their windows in the morning is now tainted with the smell of the 33, there are a total of 35, gas turbines that are powering the supercomputer Colossus. The pungent stench of ecological catastrophe is toxic and impure to the Black people who are experiencing higher rates of asthma. It is like Christina suggested, the weather is anti-Black, and when it enters the lungs like the emissions from the data center have entered this community, it has the potential to be fatal. It claimed Alexis Humphrey's grandfather, who suffered from COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This is a respiratory illness that develops in a person that smokes cigarettes. Alexis' grandfather did not smoke cigarettes. Nonetheless, the poisonous aroma, which is indicative of the county's blatant disregard for Black social life, can awaken you in the middle of the night the same way it did Alexis, immediate caution being taken since she feared that gas was seeping into the house while she lay resting. Her neighbor, Easter Knox, says the odor of this totalizing killer makes it feel like your whole world is collapsing down on you. Feels like you're fixin' to die. Those who benefit from this airborne attack don't even have enough of a backbone to look the folks in the face that they're harming. They recite a script approved by their morally bankrupt boss at a town hall meeting while lying outright or by omission, saying that they had the community's best interests at heart. Memphis citizens inhale a polluted atmosphere on the daily, while government officials and elected representatives turn a blind eye, the way the world has always done, when Black livelihood is in peril. Natural gas, in this case, is a sidekick, a slow, silent killer that encircles Black Tennesseans. It is transparent in the way it exacerbates the suffering of those that are immunocompromised. It is heard in the greedy rumble of the turbines a few miles away. It is in the Casper-like essence of the permits and licenses Musk didn't need in order to evade due process because he was allowed to do as he pleased. The bodies of Black folk be damned. The F that Memphis received from the American Lung Association for ozone pollution stands not only for failed, but also fuck you. Elon and all XAI associates sing this expletive in perfect harmony to the Black community they never once considered when they laid the center's first brick. The weather is anti-Black, and AI does not hesitate when enforcing this forecast. Anti-Black cyberbullying. Reality TV show Love Island has made the streaming platform Peacock a household name, while Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus maintain their dominance as the top 3 subscriber-based entities. The success of the dating show has undoubtedly caused commotion on social media timelines everywhere. After the success of Love Island USA Season 6, showrunners continue to cast confident and stunning dark-skinned Black women. This is guaranteed viewership from the Black audience, a must-have for any platform that wants to trend, but it also has led to a continuation of misogynoir and mistreatment. Those accused of allowing or perpetrating this type of harmful behavior have attempted to atone and apologize for their actions. However, these underwhelming endeavors never bring about any genuine material resolutions since they never get to the root of the problem at hand. Living in the wake of slavery has set a precedent for Black bodies wherever they are, no matter how attractive or alluring they may be to a white/non-Black audience. Ultimately, Black flesh being a site of experimentation and extraction allows viewers and producers to consciously or unconsciously craft any narrative and image they want for the Black women simply hoping to find love in the villa. Season 7 contestants Olandria Carthan and Shelley Basainth would spend the summer not only in the sun, but also as vessels for anti-Black cyberbullying. Olandria and Shelley, at various moments inside the villa, were expected to either respond in a certain manner that made everyone else comfortable and or provide some form of emotional labor. For example, Shelley setting a boundary after feeling disrespected by Huda, a Palestinian woman, after the events of the heart rate challenge led to Shelley being deemed a mean girl. This Black woman essentially saying, "I'm not in the headspace to have this conversation, can we do this later?" went against one of the core functions of Blackness, being always available to cater to the needs of white/non-Black people. Shelley, wanting a moment to process and regulate her emotions, something anyone should have the agency to do, immediately was read as dismissal. In other words, how dare Shelley disregard how Huda feels in this moment when she's clearly apologetic? Furthermore, when Huda is not granted the forgiveness she expected from Shelley, she then turns to the next black woman for emotional support, Alandria. At the kitchen bar, Huda seeks counsel by asking Alandria, is she a terrible person? Referencing what occurred during the heart rate challenge, since Huda proclaimed it was not that bad. Alandria defies the expectation to absolve Huda of her misstep by responding candidly, saying, I don't think you're a terrible person, but it was a little much. Which majority of islanders agreed that it was, then excuses herself. Huda, being left emotionally unsupported and physically unattended to, incites another onslaught of classic white woman tears. Huda crying is then a catalyst for the producers and the non-black/white audience to spin and support a narrative that casts Huda as a victim and the two black women as the irrational antagonists. These events also underscore what Hortense Spillers identifies in her text, Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe, an American Grammar book, when she states, the procedure adopted for the captive flesh demarcates a total objectification, as the entire captive community becomes a living laboratory. In other words, this describes the experimentation and extraction aspect of blackness. Love Island USA benefited greatly from Shelley and Alandria's physical appearance, which is evident by the numerous tweets, posts, and reaction videos that harped on how unbelievably gorgeous these two black women are. The producers caught their best angles, highlighted their best features in close-up or slow-mo shots, putting them on display for the audience to marvel at these black beauties. Everyone takes something from these black women without a second thought, but black extraction unfortunately comes with a grotesque form of experimentation that goes beyond just painting the stereotypical mean girl or angry black woman narratives. What happens when crafting tales that supports or expands these cliches is no longer sufficient for the viewer that wishes to violate these black women beyond rude words and comments? How does one cross over, or rather violate the physical boundaries that may exist between them and the blackened subject? The following examples reveal how technology and the spectator's imagination allows them to 1. Insinuate an implied infliction of pain through photoshopped images. 2. Transform the black into an object of their choosing that acts as a placeholder for abuse. And 3. Remake and revive black suffering through digital alteration. These malign mechanisms are underwritten by a shadow history of experiments with blackness. This supports Professor Jackson's theory that blackness is a form that is infinitely malleable. Since blackness is able to be molded in malicious ways, the forms it may take or be subjected to will inevitably intensify with each experiment on its likeness. The popular blog BuzzFeed received backlash for an intended cheeky joke directed at Shelley and a post where the prompt was what would they serve the islanders for breakfast. While all other Season 7 contestants featured on the Instagram carousel received various edible breakfast meals, Shelley was the only one to receive a knuckle sandwich. A stock image of a white fist photoshopped between two pieces of white bread is shown beside her photo. The platform stated in their apology that serving Shelley a knuckle sandwich missed the mark based on how it landed with racial undertones rather than humor. It's important to examine that throughout the process of this post being made, not a single person seemed to pause at what the imagery of a white fist directed at a black woman signified. What BuzzFeed deemed a mistake ironically speaks to how not only is violence against black folks foundational to our society, but it's so common that gender depression also can be easily interpreted as comedic. Something harmful is somehow synonymous with being humorous. Historical context of whiteness being wielded as a weapon to dominate blackness is merely a forgotten footnote. While the fist in this context caused no bodily harm to Shelley, psychological harm was done, which is evident in a post she uploaded on her story addressing the crude quip. The inferred message in BuzzFeed's post was explicit. You deserve to be met with brute force first before anything. This form of experimentation outlines how one can inflict pain virtually when being physically present is not an option. In another instance, Asian content creator Adeline Morin uploaded a TikTok video to her 1 million followers where she labels the black punching bag hanging between her and her friend as Alandria and Shelley. After declaring this, Morin and her friend then proceed to throw simultaneous jabs at the bag in fits of laughter. These two black women, thousands of miles away from the influencer, are unaware that they have been transformed into a canister for cruelty to be emptied into. The heavy bag now bears their likeness via name for these two non-black people to rain down punches on. Adeline decides that the physical border between her and these black women is seemingly trivial, as her fantasy of harm can be conducted through other means by having this inanimate object take their place. As always, after being called out for this type of behavior, Adeline then decides to post an apology on her story in which she absolves herself of her actions by claiming that the video was just a joke and she's sorry to anyone she's offended, therefore making Shelley and Alandria's forgiveness unnecessary. She states that when the black women ganged up on Hutta, it caused her to get a little too into the drama, and she definitely didn't intend to incite any kind of violence or negativity. Once again, with no hesitation, violence disguised as humor is projected onto the black, but this time by recasting them as objects designed to absorb punches. The concern and apology is for anyone that may have been offended, but not directed at the people who the joke was intended for. This also suggests that the boldness and joy on display in the TikTok video would have vanished if Shelley and Alandria were actually in the room. The black not being physically present seems to provide a sense of comfort for non-blacks and whites to engage in something they would arguably not do otherwise. This accentuates what Takia discusses in Black Feminism at the End of the World about anti-blackness as a matrix of possibility, meaning it is both a condition of possibility for certain kinds of logics, behaviors, and economies of feeling and value. This creator's form of experimentation highlights how blackness can be invoked, dispelled, and the cause all at once. In another attempt to torment Alandria, ex-Twitter user and now banned account, Girl the Boycott, posted an edit of George Floyd's final moments, but with a deranged twist. The edit showcases the face of Alandria now in George's place on the ground, with the killer cop Derek Chauvin's face swapped with Hutta's. The force of the knee pressed upon the neck now belongs to the popular Arab contestant, and the pain of a deceased black man has now been reconfigured and transposed onto a living black woman. Here, black suffering is revisited for Floyd's family and black folks around the world who witnessed and live in the wake of his untimely murder. This remake exemplifies how the affliction of black folks is never left in the past, nor will it remain undefiled by those that wish to utilize this meme as a weapon. Our blackness is something that can always be repurposed for others' necrophilic pleasures, obsessions, and enjoyment. Indeed, our shared blackened state and the agony that arises from its racialization binds us together while simultaneously revitalizing society with our misery, since this is custom for our captors. It is apparent that if the impossible can be done, it is then made possible through running tests on black flesh. The wounds from the whip are now reopened in the contemporary with technological lashes of torture that penetrate and reverberate in a virtual matrix that leaves no inch of black being unscathed. There is no regard nor any respect for the black, even in death and decay. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading of Digital Death and Degradation by Charlie and I. Of course, as always, you guys know the links, if you want to save it for later and dissect it, are in the description box. I would also love for you guys to tell me in the comments what is either your favorite quote and or section from this piece. This, as it stands, is my favorite piece that Charlie and I have written. It does hold a very special place in my heart, especially because it was a pivotal turning point for me as a writer, thanks to the way that Charlie just pushed me and challenged me until I finally got to where we needed to be. So I'm just forever grateful to have a collaborator like them. They're extremely talented, and they always help me push the needle forward when it comes to my writing and my craft. So that is it for now, you guys, but I will see you next time with another video. It's not the destination.